Hey y'all, this is Tyler Blake from tylerblakeart.com again, and this is issue number 7 of Let's Draw Presidential Candidates as Zombies. My other working title for this project is Presidential Candidates of Questionable Vitality, just because I think that's vaguely humorous, so if y'all have any funny ideas for titles for these, please do share. So this week we have 2 candidates again, like what I have been doing lately. And this is John Hickenlooper. He used to be the governor of Colorado. He suspended his presidential campaign back in January, like early January. I think it was like January 2nd, because he just wasn't particularly getting any traction. But he, aside from his experience as governor of Colorado, he's also a small businessman, and he owned a brew pub. So I guess that's like a microbrewery combined with your own private bar kind of thing. Anyway, he had kind of a humorous moment in one of the debates where he was sparring with Bernie Sanders, and Sanders was getting frustrated and angry with him, and he went to throw his arms up like he does when he gets real agitated, and Hickenlooper says, "Go ahead, throw your arms up." I think that's pretty funny. So, anyways, I'm just going through here and adding in my grayish blue cold dead guy values like I always do. He's got just kind of a challenging face, and this happens to me a lot where and I've learned to recognize this when I'm experiencing it, but a lot of the time when I'm working on a picture, I won't be happy with it, and like partway through I'll start to hate it, or at least just feel like, oh, this just doesn't look right, everything's wrong and bad and blah blah blah. But you can't really judge it until you at least have the values in, and sometimes until you have all the colors into. And that was the way I went with this one. By the time I got done with it, I was happy with it. But I think he's just got kind of an odd, intense face, and part of it has to do. And I'm not making fun of him because I could use some braces too. But he has like oddly arranged dentition, and just the intensity in his eyes was a little bit hard to get, but I think I got there. So anyways, we have just a little bit more to go with him. At this point I feel pretty comfortable with the style I've adopted for all of the zombies. When I started this one with Jay Inslee and then Kristen Gillibrand, I was still very much experimenting with these markers. By the way, that reminds me, I have a disclaimer or a retraction correction to issue. I probably had mentioned this in one of the earlier videos, but I was talking about how these markers differ from traditional watercolor in that they remain water soluble after they're dry, right? So, right there you can see me coming through with a water brush pen and blending down what I had laid down with the yellow there. So I had, and I'm using these on Bristol board, Strathmore Bristol board to be exact. And so I had picked up some watercolor paper, and I had gotten a set of Kuretake watercolors just to kind of try them out. Because I had always been interested in those, and I wanted to kind of see how these compared to those also, just how do they compare with any more traditional watercolors. So that watercolor paper was Epson Bright White, which I got partly because you can run it through a printer reliably. So I can print out my inks on it and then watercolor over it. Or if I like, I can just do the whole thing from start to finish. But anyway, I was doing a color chart with the colors that came with the Kuretake, and then I started putting some of these on there, And lo and behold, it did not remain water soluble after it was dry. It was like regular watercolors. So the whole time it was not the watercolor markers, it was the paper I was using. So Bristol board is just inherently different than watercolor paper. So, and by the way, I've always liked Bristol board because it's smooth for running the ink over. I mean, you can get vellum, but I always got smooth, and for watercolor paper, I prefer the hot press, which is like the smoother finish compared to the cold press, or of course the rough. Um, so anyway, moving along, here we have Julian Castro, who has also suspended his campaign, and he was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under President Obama. He's from Texas, and he's politically active in conjunction with his brother, who is a state representative from Texas. And so the joke I came up with for this fellow was, well, actually there's two. The first one was, let's see, Castro brothers that want to be in charge of the government. I wonder if there's anywhere else that they've tried that and how did it work out? And then the other thing is, now that he has suspended his presidential candidacy, I would nominate him to play the Joker in the next Joker movie because, damn, that grin would make Conrad Veidt jealous. And if you don't know who Conrad Veidt is, you should go check out one of the. It was kind of a transition movie between the silent era and what the older folks would call a talkie. There was a movie called The Man Who Laughs, and Conrad Veidt plays a guy who's disfigured at birth intentionally to be used as a kind of like a circus freak. So he's got this like grin that he can't change the expression on his face, and that character was the inspiration for Bob Kane to create the Joker. So there's a little bit of nerd trivia there for you. Anyways, I'm just about ready to wrap this up. So coming up here, we have the completed version of John Hickenlooper with some process shots. There's ink with the blue line pencils and the reference. No, that got stretched out. Sorry about that. And there's Julian Castro with the ink and the blue line and the reference. You see what I mean about that smile. So anyways, this is Tyler Blake, and I approve this message.